Well, it's the end of May 2013, and the first thing to say is I'm in this town called Bakewell, a little market town in the north of England. It's in the county of Derbyshire, which is almost halfway up through England. In other words, it's a bit north of the middle of England. It's a small town. It's about 3,000 population, and I decided I would spend a couple of weeks here and study village English rural life, read all the papers and so on. So I rented this cottage. It's actually 3 rooms on top of each other. The bedrooms are the top 2, and the kitchen and the little lounge are downstairs with the television. This is my first day, actually. I was in town yesterday, but I didn't really look around very thoroughly. I propose to do that today. In the meantime, I'm trying to cope with a new cell phone I bought, which I can't seem to operate. But then that's nothing new. I can't seem to operate anything that's mechanical. I'm about as dumb as you can get in that area. So I think what I'll do is I'll just show you the view from when I look outside my door, and then I'll go into town and do a little run around town with the camera. This is the little room, the television over there, the couch. There's a table just to the left there, under the stairs, and the stairs lead up to the bedroom, 2 of them. Walking outside the door on what is a typical English day, i.e. it's raining. This is immediately in front. These are the hills over there. This is called the Peak District. I assume peak means hills. There's definitely a hill into town. I have to go down it very soon. You can't see town, it's just down there. Nearly every cottage up here has pretty flowers, actually including my own. And flowers in the window. And it's amazing what you can do with a really tiny little garden. Look how pretty this is, and there's really nothing much in it. It's only about 2 yards wide, if that. Anyway, maybe the nicest part of town is where the river is. I think it's the Y. Don't ask why, it's W-Y-E. I'm not sure, I'll check that. But there's lots of swans. And lots of ducks. And this tiny kind of waterfall. Anyway, more later. Probably the most valuable place in town for me will be the cooperative, which is a huge supermarket. And most of the houses around here where I'm living are as old as this one. 1709. I have to climb up this big hill after I go to town every day. Okay, I'm standing at the junction of a couple of streets in downtown Bakewell, and I came down to pick up my papers. Now I'm going back up home. It's a very steep hill. Bottom of the hill here is the Rutland Arms Hotel, which is the best hotel in town, and where I come and do my Wi-Fi on my Kindle to see if I've got any emails. Jane Austen revised Pride and Prejudice while staying here, and Charles Dickens also stayed in this hotel. I've come to this little village called Ashford-in-the-Water because they have a well dressing, which I will show you shortly. It's down this road here. Here is definitely an old sign. Apparently I've only come 2 miles from Bakewell. The buses run about every 2 hours. Well, we begin the village here with the Ashford Arms. Not exactly a huge village. Here's one of the wells, actually. This one dedicated to Martin Luther King. And when they talk about decorating them, they mean actually literally building a picture out of flower petals. This happened to have taken place this last weekend. You can see a lot of leftover petals here. Somebody arranged the garden to look like a maze, a little maze. There's another pub here. This one is called the Bull's Head. The Bull's Head. Flower petals are drifting everywhere 2 days later after they were installed. Cute place to live, I think. Here's a little tea room. And the local church around which all the activities were featured this last weekend that I didn't bother to come here. Does it date back a long time, this sheep watching thing?
Oh yes, yes. You took a picture of me.
Why?
I don't know that.
Why do they not wash them anymore?
There are different means of doing it, I presume.
Maybe
Please don't expect me to answer as I'm an expert on the village.
Thank you. The church was originally Norman, although it's been rebuilt. Well, obviously this tiny village is very popular with tourists. It goes back a long way. It was actually in the Domesday Book, which was an 11th century book about all the villages and communities in England. And it was big on lead mining right up until the last century. Also, there were lots of tiny little workshops and things like that around here. Nowadays, it's mostly a commuter village. People at work work in Bakewell or Buxton or one of the other towns hereabouts. And where I'm at is at the Sheep Wash Bridge. And originally the sheep were all brought here and washed before they were trimmed and penned. And hang on, couldn't miss all those dogs going by. So they have a ritual ceremony once a year at the Sheep Wash Bridge, in which they wash a few sheep for the benefit of visitors, mostly tourists. Unfortunately, I missed that. Maybe there's a postcard of sheep being washed, I don't know. It's a very sweet little quiet place. The village originally set up 10 centuries ago because there was actually a ford across the river, which I assume might be one of the bridges here. This is the Sheep Wash Bridge. Ducks hang out here, I suspect because visitors come by and maybe throw in the occasional piece of bread or something. Sheep Wash Bridge. The water's very shallow, I can see to the bottom. It can't be more than about a foot deep. And as you can see, it's not especially wide. This is all about the place. It says, when they do the well dressing, intricate pictures are made by pressing alder cones, flower petals, moss and other natural materials onto a background. Well dressing of wet clay. Up to 5 wells are dressed for Trinity Sunday. I think that was yesterday. And lasts for about a week. Sumptuous bedrooms and luxurious bathrooms is announced by the Riverside Hotel, where you can get afternoon tea with clotted butter, clotted cream and jam, and a homemade scone and coffee for £4.50. That's about $8, $7. Following the footpath in search of more wells. This is a rather elaborate one. I don't know who Joseph Paxton is, but it's the usual thing, all pressed flowers, pressed petals, pressed very tight. It isn't a well actually at this point, but still. A lot of the cottages have little colourful plaques on them. A lot of them also rent rooms. These sweet little flowers growing out of the wall. This here is the children's well. Unfortunately, it's kind of a... I wonder if it's sponsored by the Disney Channel. Some rather badly done Mickey Mouse type figures. Nevertheless, lots and lots of flowers. "2013, 30 years of the Disney Channel." How many people work on these on the wells?
Oh, quite a lot of people. They have different groups, the WI and the children, of course.
Is it always pretty much the same people that do them, or?
Yes.
I see. How long does it take to? It looks like a laborious job.
It takes a week.
A week, right.
They soak the boards in the river for a week.
Right.
Then they take the boards out. And then they clay the boards and transfer the picture onto the clay. And then gradually outline it and then gradually build up the picture from Saturday to Friday evening.
They can't grow all the flowers locally. They must bring them in from somewhere, right?
Oh, but they do. A lot of them.
A lot of them local.
Stolen from the gardens and what have you.
Here are different pictures of Ashford in the water. This really should be Ashford by the water, I suppose. Should have asked her about that. They still deliver milk in this country. Leave them outside your door. The pubs were closed because it's only 11 in the morning and they don't open till noon. So I'm sitting in the Women's Institute. Here's a lady who just brought me my tuna fish sandwich. Thank you. There's a table laden with pastries and cups of tea over there in the Women's Institute. I was just reading the booklet and it said that they wash the sheep. They push them into the river and scrub them with a paddle, and they wash them because when they sell the sheep, if they have a clean fleece, it gets a better price. A precious and essential part of life is what they say about water. And of course, in the old days, the wells were literally that. They were where people got the water. So it's been celebrated through the centuries. So when they're getting ready to decorate the wells, they soak these boards for a week in water so they'll absorb the clay better. Then they cover them with clay and put in all the petals. And most of the flowers are donated by people who grow them in the gardens around the village. And they're pin-pricked, petal at a time, into the clay background with originally a horseshoe nail. These days more likely some kind of a thin piece of wood or stick or cocktail stick or something of that sort. Maybe even a toothpick, I don't know. Well, that was kind of cute. Morning tea in the Women's Institute. Here's some sheep. Look like they've been well washed. Hello, little baby sheep. Apparently it's a big sheep farming area around here, and always has been. I like sheep. Good life, aren't you? She's a good one.
Ooh, chickens and eggs on this one.
A good life.
See what?
That's a cute baby.
Here's a big sheep. And finally, here's a well devoted to Doctor Who, that long-running BBC television series. I really like the way they cram so much into these tiny little cottage gardens. Seems to be dog walking time. Every Monday in Bakewell is market day. Today happens to be Bank Holiday Monday, the last Monday in May. Sounds religious to me. And everybody's here, even the butcher.
CSA's there. Watch out, the CSA's there.
Here's a somewhat knotty tree. It's right opposite from the indoor swimming pool and also the library, but unfortunately the library's closed today. There's something that might be useful for some people to know: how to understand men through their dogs. Picked up a tiny knife and a magnifying glass here in the market. Kind of place where you can get all the things that once upon a time Woolworths used to sell. I really miss Woolworths. That flag says England on it if it ever straightens out. Bakewell pudding is very famous, and I'll tell you about it some other time. A lot of places sell it, but most of them claim to be the original. There's a fish and chip shop just over there, though. Not only is there a big line waiting, but people standing all over the place on corners eating fish and chips. They've always been this kind of people. Big crowd, of course, for a holiday, and all these people are crossing the river at the bridge here. I don't know what she or he is representing.
Sorry.
Not always, he's not as bad in the night as he is morning.
Medieval History Club, it says, beneath the podium. Lots of ducks down that part of the river. Well, it's a wet morning at the end of May, and I've just arrived at Chatsworth. Unfortunately, nothing is open yet, so I'm just passing away the time. However, I thought I would come and visit the men's room. And this is the men's room, with tiled walls, ancient pictures on them, and the urinals right below. I'm feeling a bit bedraggled because it is wet, as usual in England, and very soon I'll start my tour. Of course, it's a huge place. I'll show you from a distance later on what the house is like. This is just the entrance. It's raining like crazy. Not the best kind of day to do anything outdoors, and there's 105 acres of gardens, which I have a feeling I won't be. It opens up with a dark corridor lined with pictures which are really, it's not terribly light enough to see, I don't think.
I'm going to try one of those dishes you have. I think I might try it. Because I always sit.
Huge entrance hall, yeah. Some kind of old chair. It said that the hall, said in the brochure that the hall was still basically the main room in the centre of activity today in the house. Some funny sculptured animals outside in the courtyard, and then past this huge vase here we climb some more, although again high up the ceiling is profusely decorated, and all around above the stairs are these statues. Fireplace filled with this. Here's another huge room with a decorated ceiling. I guess the main upstairs room. Green satin room, which I assume refers to the walls. Here's William III, who gave the US so much trouble, 17th century. I assume that is the current Duke of Devonshire. Here's a model of the house. Again, passing through the big room. There are huge mirrors everywhere. A spectacular fountain in the garden. The ceilings, as usual, are spectacular. This is the music room. One room leads into another, all across the top. Again, the decorated ceiling. Dozens of pictures on the walls. And that's interesting. It's not a real violin. It's a trompe d'oeil, however you pronounce it. A painting of a violin made to look like a real one. Tables held up by sculptures. Lots of mirrors, lots of lamps. This is the state bedchamber, where it said it was such an honour to be summoned, even if you were only to empty the chamber pot. Kings and queens stayed in this room, which was by far the most stately bedroom in the house. Lots of cherubs around the edge of this ceiling. Another tiny room off the state bedchamber. Highly decorated with pottery, ceramics of various kinds. This room is devoted to ancient drawings. The house has 3,000 of them, most dating back to the early 18th century, and many by Rembrandt. Now we open up into two other long corridors lined with pictures and various artifacts, not to mention the chandelier. This particular gallery is dedicated to Georgiana, a lively bird who was married to the 5th Duke of Devonshire, and she ran up huge gambling debts which she kept hidden from her husband. When they were finally revealed, he said, "Is that all?" She collected minerals and stuff, many of which apparently are here in this room. A lively and vibrant woman, they said about Georgiana. Portrait by Thomas Dainsborough, 1805. Incidentally, she came from the Spencer family, from which Diana descended 3 centuries later. Here's a hall full of portraits. And this picture behind me is a bit dark, but it's kind of spectacular, just because of all the people on it, all having dinner. Pass the salt. This is a guest bedroom. Would like to be a guest here. Kind of nice. 4-poster bed and everything. Some pretty old guns and swords. Hello, I wonder whose pet you are. Another guest room, a little smaller. This seems to be the library, or one of them maybe. I guess when the Duke and Devonshire have people to dinner, it's quite a show. Maybe the soup comes in there. The sculpture gallery. A lot of sculptures. Huge shop, of course, selling books and everything. The Duke's choice appear to be these furs. And as you emerge from this huge store, that's kind of the view, which is sort of nice. Now I'm at the back of the house. You walk through all of that, you can see how long it is. And back here there are gardens of fantastic greenhouses, heaven knows what. Unfortunately my battery is on the verge of running out, and like an idiot I didn't bring a spare one. It's raining too hard to step away and take the proper distance from the front of the house, but here it is. Distance I see a bit of the outlying. There's 105 acres of grounds here, including cultivated gardens, which I didn't see. So I'm going to wait here under this tree for a regular bus to come and take me. So there we are, folks, just as the battery dies out. Here I wait for my bus out of here. It's complicated. You have to take 2 buses to get here, and if you're lucky, a lift from somewhere. I'm looking out of my bedroom window, sitting above this little market town of Chatsworth, population 3,000 or so, and this is the hillside opposite. This is in Derbyshire's Peak district, P-E-A-K, peaks presumably meaning hills, of which there are a few around here. And this is sort of kind of typical rural scenery, village life. It's a steep hill that I'm on, very hard to climb, especially if you have to be arthritic. But worse than that was that I fell down in town yesterday and really banged my hip so badly that I literally couldn't walk. I had to take a taxi home up this steep hill. And I took a hot bath, and I stayed in bed all today, largely because I still have things to do around town. I went to Chatsworth, a big beautiful country house yesterday, ran out of battery time, and then when I was back in town I went to see if I could make an appointment for the mayor. And we went to one of the local pubs and had a chat, and he's amazing. He's a very young, charming guy, almost boyish in his looks. My guess is early 30s. And he was appointed, he was mayor for a year, and then recently he got re-elected for another year. So I said that once I get this camera recharged or spare battery put in, we could meet again, and on Friday we're going to do that and talk about what life in Bakewell is all about. I told him that what I was interested in little places was little things, not important things. And I said, what were some of the things? And he said, well, parking. He said, the people complain about parking, but what they should be talking about is walking. They need cars to go everywhere, even for a few yards and stuff. And of course, in a small town, it is a problem with parking. Really hard to find a spot. I decided not to rent a car rather deliberately, to see if I could just live, you know, by local buses and by walking around and stuff. And I hadn't known at the time that the place I'm staying at is such a steep hill, really hard to climb. I mean, even full-bodied people without arthritis find it hard to climb. But it is worth it, because like it's sort of a nice view from here, you know, of the countryside. Anyway, that's enough for now. I'm confined to home, so I thought I wouldn't waste it. And I'll be back tomorrow with maybe bits around town. And anyway, this is Paul, our youthful mayor. Would you care to say how old you are or not?
I tell you all my problems, but I lie about my age, John. What am I, about 48?
38 you were born?
48.
48 you were born?
No, I wasn't born in 48. I am.
Oh, you're 48 now?
I am 48.
You don't look 48, you look about 25,
yeah.
You know. It's those boyish looks. And you've been a photographer your whole life?
I was a filmmaker. I've always taken photographs. But in 1980 I moved from mid-Wales to London and got a job in a video duplicating house in the early days of when VHS came around, and I started in the film industry then, and I still work in it now, but not as much as I used to. I mean, it's changed dramatically, and it is a youthful industry at the end of the day. Really.
But mayor is a 24-hour job, isn't it? I mean, do you ever get calls in the middle of the night?
No, I don't get calls in the middle of the night. It's one of those things, because it's an unpaid role, really. I mean, you get token amount of money, because it's a parish council, or in Bakewell it's a kind of a weird parish town council, so it is unpaid, and it's what you make it. You can devote as little time or as much time to it, and I've decided that I wasn't going to take it on lightly. I'd never even been to a council meeting until about 6 months before I was mayor, and I found it was quite interesting. And the reason I joined, we saw this advert in the supermarket saying councillors wanted. And my partner Janet said, well, you're always ranting about something, why don't you do that? So I sort of applied. There was 2 places, 3 applicants. One of them didn't turn up, so I went round to the meeting and I was in. And
did you have any political involvement at all before? And I mean, I guess what you should say is, in a place like this, a small place like this, does politics have any impact at all, or is it sort of basically non-partisan everything?
Well, the town council's non-political, which I think is a good thing. Politics, I mean, you've got district and county politics. That tends to be very conservative. Had the same sort of conservative leader here now for a long time. Yeah, no, it is. It's a conservative area.
I mean, you get political rivals who actually attack you on political grounds, maybe, or decisions you make.
Well, I'm not a member of any political party. So I've never really. I mean, I've always been interested in politics. My ex-father-in-law was. He was ambassador for Mauritius in London, and he was deputy prime minister of Mauritius. He was one of the founder members of the state there, and he was a good man. My favourite politicians have always been socialists, really, and it's something that's sort of changing, and it's very difficult to see the difference. Now, most of them are sort of self-seekers. No, there's not. You know, you had your heroes as politicians when you were a child, and now I don't know. There's no heroes left. I don't think in politics at all. There's nobody you can really respect. One of the interesting things I've found that, and this isn't all the way through the board. Diplomacy is obviously the most important part. And a lot of people aren't as bright as you thought they should be. I don't know if you've ever come. I mean, I was always led to believe that, you know, when you councillors and you know, the sort of people, you know, when you were a young kid, or these are people, the upstanding citizens of society, and you should really respect them.
Yeah.
But I always thought people should earn your respect in a way, and I've been quite disappointed by it.
I would imagine that in England, though, there would be more respect for authority, if authority could be the word we use. But, I mean, more respect for somebody who's mayor. They wouldn't be deliberately insulting, as they are so often in the States. I mean, the better mannered are the English in general, you know? Or it seems to me that.
Yeah. I think it's yeah, they are sort of well-mannered. It's a seething well-manneredness almost, though.
Ah, I see, yeah, yes. Well, do you...
You know, like, I mean, I do it all the time. Somebody treads on my foot and I say sorry.
Yeah.
For putting my foot underneath yours.
Yeah, right.
I don't know, I mean, it's just... I don't know, manners maketh man. I think it's always nice to have good manners.
Does anybody ever really rant and rave at you? Unlike the woman on the phone who was just talkative.
Yeah, nobody rants and raves.
People
not in this area, no.
People treat you in a well-mannered way and so on.
No, I'm probably the biggest ranter and raver.
Yeah.
I mean, they do it differently, John. They do it behind your back, not to your face.
Right. Well, some of your problems, I mean, you talked about parking. I thought your quote was good the other day, saying the problem isn't the parking, it's the problem, it's the non-walking, basically, is what you said.
Oh, no, I believe that.
What are some of the other, I mean, in a place like this, you're bound to have parking problems. It attracts tourists and the streets are narrow, so, yeah. You know. So, but what else are the things that are constantly coming up that you have to deal with?
Parking.
Location.
The big one is, there's another big one, and it's something that really bugs me as well, is A-board proliferation and advertising hoardings.
Advertising?
Hoardings, yeah, which is like, it's a bit...
You mean public billboards and stuff like that?
Yeah, people just, you know, now, you know, at one time to have a banner, it was very expensive.
Yeah.
Now you can just go on the internet and £30, you've got yourself a big banner like that, and they're ugly. You know, before people had to have them designed properly.
Yeah.
There's a lot more thought goes into them, but now people are just spending about 5 minutes and getting a banner made, and they just drape them along like that side of a building. And if you see Bakewell on a weekend by the town hall, there must be about 7 banners all saying about the same thing.
Right.
One thing.
But do you have the rights as mayor to order them down or anything?
Not well. It's a district council matter, and like there are sort of guidelines in place for that, but if you don't adhere to them, nothing happens, because what they'll take you to court, and then they just can't afford it, or they don't have the initiative to do it. I do think that the A-board situation as well, you know, like people, you know, especially at the moment in the economic climate, they think they have to promote their thing, so you know, you're dodging in between them, and it's almost like I think it's saturation point that you have so many of these now. You can't do it. At one time, your A-board was your shop window. Now they want the shop window, and they're placing boards all down the pavement, and you want around them. And you know, and big problem. Some people actually have A-boards which are really nice and add, you know, in keeping with the style of the shop, and they look attractive. And other people just have the ones from the multiples, like walls, or you know, just glossy things that you see everywhere. And they're very distracting. I think they're really ugly. But the problem you've got is there is no law for aesthetic.
Well, authorities in small places are very circumscribed, aren't they? I mean, for example, I told you about in Carver, the guy wanted to build a house next to the cricket pitch. The local council denied him the permission. The county said, no, he can build what the hell he wants, you know. Yeah. So there's a lot of that sort of thing in small places. I guess you have to learn that you can only do so much.
And it's not just small places. I think it's a proliferation everywhere. But we're trying at the moment. There's a new initiative by the National Park. As you know, they've set out a set of guidelines which we're hoping everybody will adhere to, because after a while, you know, it just proliferates. Somebody said, well, he's got one, and then they get one, and then he's got two, well, I get two, and it's like some, you know, it's like the nuclear build-up almost, you know, like with that. Yeah. And it just ceases to be effective. And,
right.
I mean, I don't know. I think the big selling point, you have to look upon the town as a whole, where, you know, you don't want to see A-boards. I think we should look different too. We're not the high street, but even though we have so many shops here, and I think people will buy into the fact that we don't have them, that we are different. And I think it's very sort of short-term and panic almost to stick advertising.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll riff a bit on it. You had said that I now I've forgotten what the hell it was. Oh yeah. We're talking about changing viewpoints, and you said that you'd been accused of being very fluid, and I said, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, that would be the ideal, to be very fluid. So, what would be your reaction to that kind of accusation?
I suppose recently, you know, they've got Costa Coffee here.
Oh, what happened with Costa Coffee?
Well, there was this national news story here where Costa Coffee wanted to come into Bakewell, and we've got 24 coffee shops.
That's the same everywhere.
So what
happens over and over again.
There was a petition signed against it, and 10,000 people signed this petition.
Right.
Population of 4, because it had stopped down in there's a place in Cornwall where they'd stopped Costa Coffee coming, and I was against it. But I was on the council, so we couldn't. We'd formed our policy, what it was. And
you were against them coming in.
Yeah.
Right.
On a personal level.
Exactly right.
And anyway, they've come in. They've managed to make the shop look very low-key, and I take back, and it doesn't look as bad as I thought. I still don't like them because they're a multiple, and I find it's hypocritical when you want to support local businesses selling local products that you actually welcome in a place like Costa, which doesn't buy anything local. It just buys things from central depots, and it's a bit bland. They're all the same. There's no character to it, and I think it's very successful now. And people think it's cool, but if you look in cities, the most successful areas of cities are like places that they've tried to turn into village areas.
Right. They did a good design.
It's not a bad design, but you know. So that was.
But they didn't contravene any local laws, customs, or anything like that.
Well, you could have made it more difficult for them, because you know, there are ways around it, because it is in a conservation area, and they were talking about extra signage. There's issues with parking outside it, and it's a generic brand. Like the idea of like encouraging people to bake up because we've got a Costa Coffee, I always thought slightly bizarre, really. Would you go somewhere if you had a Costa Coffee? It would give you more of an incentive. Right. Would it? Well, you know, if you were visiting a place and it was just like, oh, they've got Costa Coffee, let's go there, yeah?
Yes, except with us it would be the other one, you know, the...
Starbucks.
Yeah, Starbucks.
But it doesn't entice you into a town because they've got one, does it?
Well, no. I mean, basically what we're saying is that they were able to turn out to be much better neighbours and tenants than you expected, and therefore you obviously had to change your mind. Now, the fact that you change your mind would then meet with opposition, so what would people say?
Well, they just say, oh, you know, I can't work you out. 1 minute you're like this, the next you're like that. Right. And you just go, well, no, I've seen what it's like, and I see that there's been massive support. It hasn't damaged the business. It looks better than I thought it was going to look, and look, I'm not going to fall out about it. It's not that important, yeah? Let's move on.
Right.
And,
well, do you think there's anything that anybody or society or anything else could do to make people realise that things were always fluid and could change, and therefore your opinion shouldn't be quite so firm and outrageous?
well, I think if people started looking at the Aboriginal thing where they believe in the circle of life, that would be a bit better,
yeah,
rather than
right.
just going down straight lines to nowhere, you know?
Right, right.
I think what goes around should come around, and, you know, you are going to end up where you started.
On the way to the cattle market. Hello, funny little sheepies. I guess it's not your lucky day if you're here to be sold. Oh, hundreds and hundreds of sheepies. Oh, poor old thing. Just all sat penned in, waiting in line.
You doing this one first?
Yeah, they got purple bikes, yeah?
Peering out from inside his truck. And then here are all the funny little calves and things jostling the room. Moo. Hundreds of cattle. These are very young and small. I wonder how old they are. Not very, I suppose.
No, yeah, went to on Saturday night.
Hello. And over there are all the sheep again. Here are some new entrants just being unloaded. They just come off a truck and they're not quite sure what they're supposed to do, but they're gradually coming into this little straw-filled place. This one discourages me. I think this one's a bit nervous about my presence. Funny thing. Move, move. Go on. Now, there you are.
Go on, little one. Go on.
Green countryside. Well, I'm afraid we're all going to be part of the Muslim Empire in a few years. Pub at the edge of town called the Manors. How old are those buildings? Are they Victorian or older than that?
Where are you next to Greece?
Right. Is it from your grave?
No,
The Rutland Arms Hotel.
Back road to your grave.
At the end.
From where, sorry?
On the left.
From, the back road to your
That's
grave.
sort of the centre of town.
Yeah, whereabouts on there?
Basically, I'm actually walking towards your grave as we speak. To the main, where the horse...
And around the side of the hotel is the hill I have to climb to go home every day. It's quite steep.
Okay, no worries.
Alright, sorry. Thank you.
It has a major church on it.
Where you park, yeah.
I walk up this hill all the way home when I can walk. I'm still incapacitated from my fall the other day, so my friend Peter here is taking me in his taxi. Uh-oh. And then we turn here at Fly Hill, and just down here to the left is where I'm staying. After several days when I really couldn't walk around, I'm now trying to make the trip into town. I'll probably get a taxi to bring me back. But when I reach the church on the way to town, I'm roughly halfway. There's still all this hill to go down into town. And flowers cover the entire space in front of these cute little cottages. That one there is Gingerbread Cottage. This one is called the Limes. And the mayor lives in one just down the hill. Has a pretty little garden at the back, all these places. And this tiny bit up front. Don't know what this stuff is, but it's really nice. And this is the one next door. Once I have got most of the way down the hill, there's a little church alley, it's called, right there. I can see the beginning of town, which is here. And just one can't be seen where that car's coming round now is hidden by this building is the Rutland Arms Hotel, which is basically the centre of town in front of that roundabout, and where I usually go to use my hi-fi, use my Kindle hi-fi, Wi-Fi rather. This is the little back alley behind these cottages. The mayor lives in one about 20 yards from where I am now, across the street from that. In fact, in this block, which is where the mayor's house is next door something that calls itself 1820 Cottage. Well, this cottage, which is in the window of a real estate office, is very similar to what we've been looking at, and they're quoting a price of about £160,000, that is, so that would be $300,000 basically. So that's what these century-and-a-half-old cottages cost. You can go to something really ritzy that's in the midst of nowhere. That's called the Mullions, a big house And what are they asking for that? £975,000. Add 50 or 60%, make it dollars. Well, here I am, right at the beginning of Bakewell. The Rutland Arms Hotel is the best place in town and kind of a central base for a lot of people. And the roundabout in front of it, where the traffic comes in, it's really always busy. And traffic comes in, because this is on the main route from Sheffield to Manchester in a sense, two big cities, and all the Derbyshire countryside, lots of little tiny towns and villages. It's a pleasant town. Nice little deli across the street on the corner of the Bakewell News, which is where I bought my newspapers every day. So sitting in front of the Rutland Hotel, in front of the roundabout here at the beginning of town, you can either go up there or up this main street here, which is also the road to Matlock and Derby and Haddon Hall. Haddon Hall is that fabulous place where they filmed Pride and Prejudice and several other of those novels of that era. A bridge, some countryside, Chatsworth, and around Bakewell. That fast takeout over there is a pizza kebab well. There are several cute little passageways and hidden squares here and there, of which this is one. Little cafes almost everywhere. Always a lot of tourists. So it's very pleasant to sit here by the river and admire the ducks. This is the River Wye, W-Y-E. Has a little waterfall here. It's okay, I don't mind.
Didn't want to spoil your view.
Lots of ducks. And if you cross the bridge here, the bridge leads to the agricultural centre where every Monday they bring in the cattle and the sheep and farmers come and bid for them. So I think that what I'm going to do is just walk a little way down the river. There's a thing here that shows you all the birds and it asks you not to feed them. That, by the way, is a tufted duck. It asks you not to feed them. It says they have quite enough natural food. It would be better if you just left them alone. You could actually walk along the river for quite a way from this bridge, past the big recreation ground where they have the cricket matches and where there's kind of a park. But there's nothing to be gained really by me taking that walk. So I'll just leave the bridge, leave the river, and go to the library. That's the Co-op, the biggest supermarket in town. Two little pubs, the Peacock, the Queen's Arms, and this fine building here is actually the tourist office. Behind which is another pub, the Wheat Chief, and in front of which is the square here, where I fell down the other day and injured my side and haven't been able to walk properly since. When you come around the corner, here's the town hall, and just down the street at the bottom you can see the Rutland Arms again, the hotel that is basically the center of town. And then right here is the original, old original Bakewell pudding shop.